Sorry, I had to pull up my scripture. I'll pull that up at the end.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. This wonderful sunny day. We are so grateful that we are above ground. We're happy about it. Anytime you can be thankful for another day, we thank God. We thank God. I am Portia Wheatley. I am the founder and the president of a nonprofit organization acknowledged as Trophy of Life Incorporated, where we have the opportunity, the privilege, and the assignment to render hope, encouragement, and inspiration to you, our audience all around the world. Let me bring in my co-host.
Hello, everyone. My name is Takira Swan, and I am so happy to be here with you today on this beautiful Friday. Our guest, I won't even go into our guest. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman. I can't wait to hear what she has to say today. But before we get started, you know what I'm going to say. Join our team by going to our YouTube page, like, share, subscribe, so that you can help us share hope, encouragement, and inspiration to the entire world.
And that's what we do through this platform, acknowledges Project 365. We love doing it. That is our God-given purpose. So when he gave us this idea, we were like, okay, let's do it. We didn't know how much we were biting off of or chewing off of, but he's allowed us to do it. And today is our 211th consecutive day that we are performing purpose, and we're grateful. Well, today we have with us a woman of God who just loves some Jesus, and not just love Jesus, she loves doing what Jesus has called her to do. And one of the things is to testify and show his goodness and his mercy and how God has performed in her life. And today she's going to talk about a divine healing that has occurred in her body. And I've heard it a couple of times, but every time I hear it, it just blesses me all over again. And it gives our audience an opportunity to hear God's goodness, as well as to hang in there. If you have something that's going on in your body, an illness, a disease, some type of health issue, a health challenge, just know, keep the faith, believe in the word of God, believe in what God has told you. Hang in there. She will give you a testimony of how long she prayed, but she hung in there. And now she will shout it from the mountaintop what God has done for her. And we're ready to hear it. Paula, thank you so very much for joining us on today. You have the platform.
Thank you so much, Takira and Portia, as I call you. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me this space. And first, because I am a church girl, I just give all honor to God. And he is the head of my life. And I just praise him for what he has done, what he is doing in the present time, and what he is going to still do, because I'm still believing. No, I have not always had that steadfastness of believing, because as Portia Wheatley said, you know, I was diagnosed as a child 43 years ago, this past May, with juvenile diabetes. It was right before my 13th birthday, and that's how I remember my 13th birthday. Very devastating, very hard, especially for a child at that particular point in my life. I was scared to death of needles. You said I was going to the doctor because I was one of my mother's 5 children that was always sick. And you mentioned doctor to me. I knew it meant needle, drawing blood, getting a shot, something. I was that child that screamed and hollered, that took 3, 4 people to hold down, because that's just how bad it was. I was scared of the white coats. But to move forward up to that point in time, there was I had just started, I guess I can say this on here, my menstrual, around that, right before this time of being diagnosed. And that was what had caused me to go to the doctor, because at 12, my menstrual didn't show. I was raised by my godmother, who was a PK. I'm a PK kid because my godmother, assistant pastor, Pentecost church, I was, why isn't my menstrual showing, not showing? He's trying to testify for me. But in that point in time, when I went to the doctor, it was behind that, it was not showing. And a lot of people don't know, as being diagnosed with diabetes, it's an autoimmune deficiency where your body attacks itself. It could come up, mine was hereditary. Everyone basically on my father's side of the family had developed it, but they all developed it in their 60s up in age. At that particular time, I was the only child. So no one was looking for it, in a child. So when I started going and I went to the doctor myself, the doctor was testing me for everything but diabetes. This is a testimony in itself. When they diagnosed me with it and they wasn't testing for it, my glucose at that particular time was 900. Normal is 80 to 140. They were looking at me, and it took the doctor to even say it, that you're standing in front of me with diabetes, and it's nothing but God that's keeping you. Because at that particular times, my kidneys should have shut down. I should have started losing my eyesight. And some other organs should have just shut down on me. Fast forwarding, I went to the hospital. They had doctors in the lobby waiting for me because the doctor called ahead to admit me. And he told them, they asked, what ambulance is she coming in? He said, she's not coming in an ambulance. Her mother's coming with her in a taxi cab. I lived in New York City at the time. And they said, taxi cab? He said, yeah, she's gonna walk in. So doctor, all three doctors were standing in the lobby waiting for me to walk in, because I'm a person with a glucose of 900, and I shouldn't be walking, I shouldn't be talking, I shouldn't anything. They met me and my godmother in the lobby, took me upstairs, started explaining everything to me. And I had to go through a teaching and everything. I was in the hospital for over 2 weeks because they had to get my glucose down to where I could function. Because when you have a high glucose, it causes you to be thirsty. You lose weight at the drop of a hat. You constantly running to the bathroom. Those are symptoms. So get out of the hospital. And this is where they're telling me you're gonna have to be on insulin for the rest of your life. That means I have to take a needle. And I told them I wasn't doing that. So the instructor just told me bluntly, well, if you don't do it, you're gonna die. I rethought it. I learned how to do the shots. And at that particular time, I was doing them like 2 to 3 times a day. So fast forwarding again, now, mind you, I'm having all these problems. I had behind the diabetes, if you're not very careful with it, you can run into a lot of problems. You can run into, like I said, your eyesight, amputations, misforming of your kidneys, heart attacks. Well, I'm here to tell you that in those 43 years, I've had a heart attack. I had problems with my kidneys. I had, well, I always wore glasses. So my eyes were never affected. My retinas or anything weren't damaged. But I praise God because during that time, you know, they had me in prayer lines from 13 on up. Get in the prayer line, get in the prayer line. You know, God can heal you from this. I'm now 20 years old, fast forwarding 7 years. And I happened to ask different doctor at this time, I'm in another state of New Jersey. And they said, for you to even think about being off insulin or being decreased or anything like that, that's not even possible. Your pancreas is no longer working at all. That's not even a possibility. You've been on insulin 7 years. Okay. Still people pushing me, get in line. At this particular time, I'm starting, okay, look, I don't even want to hear. I'm going fast forward 7 more years. I'm 14 years in this, you know, and I started, okay, I'm just going to doubt and not get in the line anymore. Because at this particular time, I've watched God heal me from death at this particular time twice already. And it's all behind the diabetes. And that's what discouraged me. It was, I'm having these problems behind the diabetes, but you're not healing the diabetes. You're healing the other symptoms. You're healing what's going on in my body, you know, the edema. They're looking at my kidneys and saying you're starting to spill protein, which is the first sign of kidney damage. Oh, and that's standing at a standstill. But you're not touching the diabetes, which is causing all the other problems. And I started getting angry about that because my thought was, okay, I wouldn't be dealing with these other problems if the diabetes got, if you heal that and take that away. Take this away. So I'm like, and still I'm not thinking of the scripture. I'm just like in the flesh part now. You're not doing what I'm asking. You're not doing what I'm asking. In the meantime, during this time, he's healed me from cancer, where they was trying to take my ovaries. My youngest child would not have been here if they had did the hysterectomy the year prior. God healed me of that. You know, he's healed me from death at the age of 21, where I felt like Hezekiah behind the diabetes. I had an infection that was in my blood system that went so far that they had to fly in an antibiotic from California to New Jersey because the doctors had given up. So I know what it's like to say, okay, our hands are up in the air. There's nothing else that we can do. Then to move forward, since I moved here to Maryland, I was at death's door twice behind the diabetes. My glucose had dropped on my job, where a patient of mine, because I worked in the medical field for 25 years, a patient of mine thought I was ignoring her. My glucose had dropped where my eyes look like I'm looking at you, but I'm not responding. I was heading towards a coma. In that time period, everything's going forth. My coworker came in and found me, called 911. I'm at the hospital working. He calls 911 and they run across the parking lot to take me over. But this is how miraculous. God always has a ram in the bush. They had me in as Jane Doe because they didn't know my name. They didn't know anything was wrong. They couldn't tell what was wrong because I wasn't able to speak. I could hear them where they took a mirror and put it in front of my face to see if I was even breathing. They couldn't see, my breathing had went so low that they couldn't see whether I was really breathing. But it took another man of God that worked the front desk to come into the room to say, did we find out who Jane Doe is? I had my insulin pump on me because now I'm not doing shots. I'm getting insulin every hour on the hour. For an insulin pump, for you to know what that is, you're getting insulin into your body and it's acting like a pancreas on the outside and is going straight to your system to work like you're getting insulin. to keep you controlled. And I'm steady getting insulin, but in the meantime, I'm sitting almost with a glucose of 20, which means you're going into a coma. And the guy comes in and the doctors were puzzled. They pulled my insulin pump up. They was thinking it was something dealing with cancer. They didn't know what it was. You're a doctor in the ER and don't know what this machine, this medical device is. It took the young man that was saved, that was already praying. And these were his words to me. He said, I was already praying for you. He said, but when the doctors held it up, I had already been studying on it, what that machine was, because both his parents were diabetics. He said, he yelled to him, that's an insulin pump. She's a diabetic. They started running, calling for stat this, stat that, get the glucose in here. We need to bring her back up. She's about to go out. Once they did that, he said, when they stuck me, I screamed. He said, when he heard the scream, that's when he knew I was fine. They got me back around. By this point, it had been hours since I had been off work. My children were wondering where I was because it's now 7 p.m. at night. I should have been home 2 hours ago. Fast forward again. They said I had a heart attack. This is all behind the diabetes. And God still has not healed me from the diabetes. I'm now diabetic. 15 years ago, 38, no, about 23 years, 28 years now, strong, still on insulin, going forth. And I drove myself to the hospital, not knowing what was wrong. I felt lightheaded. 1 o'clock in the morning, I drive myself to the hospital. 12 hours later, they saying, you had a heart attack. We got to take you to another hospital. Take me to the other hospital. Now they're diagnosing me as another Paula Frazier that's from Maryland. And they're treating me as her because they said you had this heart condition since you were 5 years old. I'm steady trying to tell them that's not me. Oh, you're in denial. Go on. I ended up in the hospital for 2.5 months because they're treating me as another person. So in that time period, this is now 28 years strong being a diabetic, and God's still not doing anything with the diabetes. Mind you, I have to keep my eyes open in the hospital that I'm in for 2 months straight because they're treating me with glucose instead of sodium. So in treating me with glucose, they keep saying, oh, your glucose levels won't go down. I'll look up at the IV and I see you giving me sugar. That's why they're not going down. I needed the sodium. So fast forward again. Now here we go, 2020, I'm doing good still. It took me 2019 when I was going before the Presbyterian at Kingdom Worship Center. And they asked me, what's the one thing that I can say? I said, I can testify that he's a healer because he's healed me with the heart. He's healed me from cancer. He's healed me from death doors. I don't know how many times. You're sitting here looking at a miracle. But I said, the one thing he has not touched that I've been asking him for is my diabetes. And I guess I'm like Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, where this is my thorn that I have to live with. Pastor comes and preach. Archbishop Ralph Dennis comes and preach. Until you become content with whatever it is in your life, God's not going to move. Once you become content and then rest in him, that's when he moves. I acknowledged that in 2019, finally acknowledged and go forth doing and going forth in my ministry. Because I was always told when I do tell people I'm a diabetic, you don't look like a diabetic. I said, well, what does one look like? Well, they always sick. They're missing limbs. You know, you don't look like that. You look healthy. If you didn't tell me you were a diabetic, I wouldn't know. I said, well, praise God. All I can say is God. And I left it as that. We go into 2020 and I'm fine. I'm going through, hadn't seen the doctors because everything's shut down. The end of 2020, I did a doctor's appointment virtually. I went and did some blood work. And I was telling him, I said, you know, I'm having problems where my glucose is starting to just drop. He said, well, your hemoglobin A1C, which is a test they run every it looks back 3 months and it can see what your glucose levels have been running. You're coming down almost into a normal range. And it looks like you're taking too much insulin. So he backed off some of the insulin that I'm getting every hour on the hour to keep me regulated. That was in November. Okay. It was around March or April. I'm passed out in my house and I live by myself and I'm down in the floor. The last time that I remember looking at the clock, it was like 3-something in the afternoon. Okay, I'm down in the floor. When I look at the clock, when I finally crawl, I could tell when I'm coming around, hey, your glucose is low because I can't stand. I'm wobbly. I had to crawl to where I wanted to go. But in the meantime, my dog was laying next to me, like she's protecting me. And she laid there and I'm looking now, I'm like, this is 5 hours. I lost track of time, 5 hours. But then as I think of it now, when I think back, God laid Adam out to give him his helpmate. When he took that rib from Adam, God was laying me out because at the time being, I didn't know because the evidence wasn't shown until 3 months later. Excuse the camera from shaking, but I'm getting a little. When he laid me out, I didn't know it then. He was starting to answer that prayer from 43 years ago. I got up, like I said, and got myself together. And normally I have to do a shower and everything because when you go through those things, you sweat like someone poured water on you. I got myself together and got up and did what I was supposed to do. But then not only after that, the whole month between April and May, before Mother's Day, the ambulance had been at my house 3 different times. Till a friend of mine had to come to my house to get me to call the ambulance because that's how far out. The insulin is being too much. And of course, family members, are you eating? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Yeah, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I was doing everything I was supposed to do. Go to the doctor in June, right before my 56th birthday. And the doctor looked at my hemoglobin A1C again. Your numbers are going down. But he did some other tests because my primary care doctor did a whole bunch of tests. He says, I'm looking at this other test. It looks like your body has insulin in it. Not the one from the pump, but it looks like your body is starting to produce insulin. When he said that, I said, say that again. He said, it looks like your body is starting to produce insulin. We need to back off the insulin again. At that particular time, I was taking more than a unit of insulin an hour a day. So I was up and that didn't count what I was eating, what I was bolusing. So I'm getting about 30 to 40 units a day. Now on just a basal rate, I'm under 20. He said, I want to see you again in September. And if it goes down to your hemoglobin is 5 or so, we're going to take you off the insulin pump. And walking back to my car, I know a couple of people were looking at me outside because this is 43 years later. Not the woman with the issue of blood saying she's suffering for 12 years, but this is a woman that from childhood up going through, and she's going, I had to let that grace be sufficient for me to take me through. And that, he said that he would work it out in his timing, not mine, but his timing. Not saying, and I'm not saying, I gave up for even asking for that, because he's proved himself to me as a healer in every other area. But in the one thing that I wanted him to work out, he wasn't doing it. He said, no, let me take you through some other stuff. You keep hearing people say you don't look like a diabetic. You keep hearing saying, that's not how they normally look. But I'm going to show you in my time, even though the doctors told you when you was 20 years old, don't even look for that. But I'm going to take you down 20 something more, 30 something years later to show you what I can do. And I'm here to tell you, don't give up hope. I know sometimes it's hard. Keep believing. Yeah, we all say, I speak it, because I heard one of our soul wealth sisters say, speak it. Speak that happiness, that health. Keep yourself hydrated. Do whatever it is it takes. Then she said, align yourself. So I had to align myself with the word and go back to his grace is sufficient, that he's going to allow me to go through it and be content in the state that I was in. And then protect myself, do what I'm supposed to do, eat right, protect the peace in me and be within, and then exercise. And then doing all of that, Leslie said, that shapes what's going to happen. Be excited, be eager for what's going to move and what's going to happen. And, I'm so glad that, I was in the midst of doing that, and God moved and he's touched my body. I'm excited about my report in September, even beforehand, because I'm expecting the great. And God is going to do just what he said, as what I've asked him for, complete total healing and removing me off the insulin pump in my body in these 43 years. And that 4 and that 3 is 7, which is completion. And I'm relying on that 7 for completion. And I thank God for that.
I know you thank God for that. I thank God for that. My God, you hear our band in your ears. Nowadays, you don't even have to hear the band. You just be grateful. There's a dance in my, it doesn't take much for me to dance. A dance in my feet. We always keep a praise on our lips for what he has done, what he's doing, and what he's going to do. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Many people have died from just some of the things that you've already experienced. But the grace of God. Woo! Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And we are so grateful to God. We are grateful to God for what he's promised you, Paula. You have to let people know. And I'm grateful that Project 365 is here to help you spread that testimony, spread the word of the goodness of God and what he can do when you pray, when you believe and tell of his goodness. God is a great God. He's worthy to be praised. Now, I usually say that Project 365 isn't a churchy platform, but this right here, we bless God. We bless God. We bless God.
I hear Brian's drums.
The dog, yeah, the dog is blessing him, and we do hear Spider on the drums, I'm telling you. Woo. And Brock on the keyboard, Craig on the keyboard. It's amazing. The goodness of God. God is always good. He's always good. When we trust in him, leave the dog alone. He's good. He's just, look, he's just with the number. He's just with the number. So audience, I just encourage you. It may not be diabetes. It may be something else that you're believing God for divine healing. Keep on trusting him. And when he does it for you, you are obligated to tell the world what God can do.
And
You're
don't let them
obligated to do.
speak on you disease, because that's a dis-ease in your body. You speak on the fact that his grace is sufficient. His grace is sufficient. Don't let that dis-ease take you out of your alignment with him. Do that vertical alignment. And I had at one point got that dis-ease in me because it kept being spoken. Don't let it be spoken over you.
And then when someone tries to reject it, reject it. So many people want to be spiritual now. Of course, there are definitely spiritual men and women of God, but there are some that are wolves in sheep clothing. And when you know the word, when you know God's voice, and you know when to receive and you know when to reject, and your own relationship with God would allow you to discern and know the difference. Greater is he that's in me
one
than he that's
thing.
in the world. Yes.
I don't want anyone to go without doing what the doctor says, though. Please be mindful, because I tell people all the time, even Jesus walked with a physician, Luke. And there was a purpose in that. He wouldn't put us with physicians if you don't align yourself and follow. It's in my spirit to say that, because some people will just run and do, oh, he did it for her, and don't follow what the doctor says. Please follow what your physician says, and then pray about it and do what God says along with what the physician says. I must say that. The two work hand in hand.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes when God heals us, he heals us through the knowledge that he's given to the physicians, that he's, blessed those hands to work on his people. Yeah. So I'm so glad you said that. And I am so glad for your testimony. Oh, Miss Paula, I'm telling you, I've known you for quite some time now. And, I've been a witness to the things that he's done in your life. And I am just so happy. I'm happy for you that God is showing up in your life this way. And just to go along with what you were saying, I just want to tell our viewers, just do not give up hope. So one thing you don't want to do is just go on your own path because you're comparing yourself to Miss Paula here and her journey. No. Everyone's journey and everyone's story is different. And what you have to do is you have to seek God and align yourself with God for the journey of your life and say, okay, God, how are you going to use what I'm going through to get glory out of my life here? And then when you do that and you have clear instruction, whether it's to wait, to go see this physician, to do this, hear from God for yourself so that he can work his miracles in your life, just like he's done for Miss Paula. Her message was, hey, don't give up hope. Yes, I'm doing, healing you from the symptoms of your dis-ease, but don't hang up on me yet. He's like, I got you. And now I'm telling you, I can't wait till September till you say, guess what, y'all? Like, you're gonna make me tear up already. I'm telling you, because it's gonna be amazing. And I feel like sometimes God has has us go through situations like this where it's not instantaneous healing like that, because he needs to show that he still has your back through everything, through thick and thin, and that he can work miracles and do some good things in your life. So I am just so happy. I'm so proud of you for just being the strong woman that you are. And I just want to encourage our viewers again to hang in there, seek God for yourself, and just do not give up.
Yes.
It's amazing. Again, we just thank God for this service today.
Right, that's all the plate.
It's worth it. When you take the time to give God praise, you'll be surprised how it lifts your spirit. It lifts your spirit. It changes your emotions. It puts you in a better space. So practice giving God praise. Practice, and then it will become such a natural part of you. It's not that because we're saved that everything is going well. Even when you give your life to Christ, everything is not going to go well, but at least you know you have a safe and secure future, and that's with him. When he cracks that sky, oh, bye, I'm leaving. Wouldn't want to be you. Anyway, again, we're thankful to you, Paula, for accepting our invitation to come and to be a part of Project 365, where you definitely have offered hope, encouragement, and inspiration to our audience across the world, nationally and internationally. And we're again grateful to God for what he's doing in your life. So we'll see you back here again, most likely sometime in September, so we can prove to the enemy our God still sits on the throne. He's still a healer. He's still a miracle worker. All right.
Miracle signs and wonders.
Absolutely. And they're happening today in 2021. They're happening today. Let no one tell you otherwise. And we still trust God and we praise him for the same. Until tomorrow, blessings to you, and we will see you again on tomorrow at 1 p.m.